Hey everyone. Today we are going to divide fractions. The key here is to remember to keep, change, and flip, and that will help you divide fractions. And I have 2 or 3 fun videos that go along with this that will help you remember and have us get a song stuck in your head of keep, change, flip, because that's going to make dividing fractions so much easier. So why am I keep changing and flipping? Let me show you something really cool. Here is a division problem right here with fractions that's not pretty, right? These fractions aren't pretty. 4/7 divided by 2/7. You get an answer of 2. But watch what happens if I change this division to multiplication and then I flip those two, the numerator and the denominator, to 7/2. Guess what my answer still ends up being? It still ends up being 2. Okay, with this example right here, if we divide by 4/6, we get 5/4. Well, if we change this to multiplication and we flip the 4/6 to be 6/4, we still get 5/4. Again, right here, if we divide by 5/9 and change that to times 9/5, our answer is still 3/5. If we take 4 candy bars, cut them into half, we end up with 8 pieces. Well, 4 times 2 is 8, and that's just 1/2 flipped over to be 2 wholes. So, moral of the story here is if you take the fraction and multiply it by the reciprocal is just the fancy way to say flip, it gives you the same answer. So I could go and I could make a video about how you actually can divide fractions, and it could get complicated and you could be like, whoa. But you already know how to multiply fractions. So why don't I just tell you that if you take any division problem and multiply and flip, you're going to end up with the same answer. Wouldn't you want to be like, well, I choose that. I'm just going to keep, change, flip. I'm just going to turn every division problem into multiplication problem because multiplying is way easier than dividing. So that is the clue. That is the huge, huge hint today. So 5/2 divided by 5/7. It's now time for you to put this in your notes. When we keep the first fraction exactly the way it is. When we change this to the opposite, the inverse. The opposite of division is multiplication. And then the flip part is we take this fraction and we flip it. We make it 7/5 instead of 5/7. And then from here on out, it's just multiplying fractions, which you know and have done. And the first thing I'm always going to look for is if I can cross simplify. I can divide both of those by 5, and now I'm left with an easier problem. Now I do 1 times 7 instead of 5 times 7. So the answer is 7/2. And finally, with fractions, anytime you have a fraction answer that's improper, 2 things need to happen. You need to simplify it and you need to make it so it's not improper. If you left this as 2/7, you are, this poor number 2 cheerleader here on the bottom is holding up the 7 numerator, and it's a bigger number. It's a lot heavier. So we're not going to leave fractions that way. We're going to flip it over and we are going to divide. And that will give us our final answer. 3/2 is much prettier than 7/2. So that is your first example of keep, change, flip in order to divide fractions. So here's another example of when we'll divide. It's when we are cutting something up into equal pieces. In this example, Ben has a 5-foot board and he needs to cut it into 1/3 foot pieces for some project. And so they need to be exactly 1/3 foot in length. So we're going to put the 5 first because that is what we are dividing up. And we're going to divide it into 1/3 pieces. So we are going to keep the first number, change this to multiplication, and flip this. There's the keep, the change, and the flip. Now, this can change into just not being there at all. 5 times 3 is the same as 5 times 3 wholes, 3/1. So 5 times 3 is 15. Ben, the question is how many pieces will he have? He will have 15 pieces. Cool, huh? Keep, change, flip. That's as easy as it can get. So how much chocolate will each person share if 3 people share a half of a pound of chocolate equally? Let me show you a mistake that I have a lot of students make on this problem. They'll be like, all right, well, there's 3 divided into halves, okay? But here's what is happening when you go 3 divided by half. If you're not focusing on what is actually being divided up, you might divide something up that doesn't want to be divided up. For example, this 3, we're talking about people. And so when you put the 3 first, you are taking 3 people and you're talking about dividing them into halves. That's kind of sketchy. We don't want to divide up people. This problem is not about dividing up people. It's about dividing up chocolate. So please, if you put people first, you're going to end up with 3 people running away from you because they hear that you're going to chop them into half. Be careful what number goes first. When you divide, the first number is what is being divided up. It's not the, oh, look, 3 is the first number, so it's putting it first. No, we are dividing up chocolate. So chocolate needs to go first. If we put the chocolate first, we end up with 1/2 divided by 3. And that means that 1/2 represents the half pound of chocolate. And the 3 represents the 3 people that are going to share that half a piece of chocolate. If you set it up this way, you're going to end up with a situation that looks a lot more like this. You're going to end up with 3 happy people that all got to share chocolate. So, moral of this story is make sure you don't put people first. Make sure the first number is what is being divided up. So if we have that 1/2 of chocolate and we change it to multiplication, and then we go 1/3 because we're flipping the 3, that'll leave us with 1/6. How much chocolate is that? Okay, now here's another trick. When we have a story problem, we see how much chocolate. A lot of people want to just write, well, everyone will get 1/6 chocolate. But that doesn't really tell me how much chocolate that is. Is that 1/6 of a pound, 1/6 of a ton, or like 1/6 of an ounce? So how are they measuring the chocolate? They're measuring the chocolate in pounds. So you need to make sure that your label has pounds as well. All of those 3 people, they'll all get 1/6 of a pound of chocolate. Okay, so be careful with your label. Make sure you actually are answering the question and helping me know what exactly is going on. Okay, so here's one final tip with dividing fractions. Sometimes it's easier to ignore the numbers first. That way you can get in your mind what's going on, and then you can figure out better what is being divided up. Let me give an example. So Mari wants to cut some pieces of ribbon into equal pieces. So it sounds like she has a piece of ribbon that she's going to cut into equal pieces. How long will each piece be? Well, in my mind, I'm seeing she has ribbon that she's cutting up. So we need to put the ribbon first. How long is the ribbon? Well, it is 2/3 of a yard piece of ribbon. So the 2/3 goes first. Even though the 2/3 is a lot smaller than the 6, in the story problem, it's the ribbon that we're cutting up, that we're dividing up, so it needs to go first. Then we're going to keep the 2/3, change to multiplication, and flip. How do you flip a whole number? Well, you put it over 1, because 6 over 1 is the same thing as just 6. Then we're able to flip it to be 1/6. And before I multiply, I always check to see if I can simplify. Those 2, I can divide both of those by 2, right? If I have 2 and 6, I can take out a 2, and that leaves me with 1 and 3. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 3 is 9. 1/9 ribbon? How are they measuring the ribbon? They're measuring it in yards. So each piece will be 1/9 of a yard of ribbon. Let's do one more example where we don't look at the numbers, and that might help us know what number goes first. Toby and his friends are building a doghouse. They need to cut a board that is this long into a certain number of pieces. How many pieces can they cut? So this is a similar problem, right? We're taking something, a piece of wood, and cutting up. So not ribbon this time, but we're taking wood and cutting up. So how long is that piece of wood? Well, it's 2/3 of a yard long. Is that the number we had before? Oh, only, yeah, it's the exact same distance as the ribbon. Huh. And we're going to cut it into 1/6 yard pieces. So again, we're going to keep, change, and flip. These two problems are fairly similar, aren't they? When we cross simplify, we see that we can divide both of those by 3. And we're left with 4. The question is, how many pieces can they cut? So it'll be 4 pieces. Technically the 1/6 of a yard, but it will be 4 pieces. Okay, so I want you to try this one. Hal has 3 friends. They want to divide up half a cake. So they have half of a cake. They're going to divide it between their 3 friends. How much will each friend get? Do some work there. Let's see if you get the correct answer. Okay, finally, here are your takeaways. So make sure you write these down. Turn any fraction problem into a multiplication problem by using keep, change, flip. Make sure whatever is being divided up is put first. So don't ever put people first because we never really divide up people. And the last thing is, if your answer ends up, we didn't see an example like this, but you might in your homework. If your answer ends up being improper with the bigger number on top, maybe we did, we need to make sure that we turn it into a mixed number. Okay, friends, have fun with this. Just know anytime you are changing it to multiplication, you're making it easier. Instead of having dividing fractions, you get to multiply fractions. See you later.